Hello, my name is Kiara Nouriel and I'm ADL's Managing Director in Israel and Senior Regional Director for the Middle East and North Africa for ADL. Welcome to our webinar, Renewal and Reintegration of Jewish Communities in the MENA region. At this time, I would like to introduce ADL's Senior Vice President for International Affairs, Ambassador Marina Rosenberg.
Thank you, Carol. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Since its founding in 1913, ADL has championed the fight against anti-Semitism and the pursuit of justice and fair treatment for all. We engage in research, advocacy, education, and keep our communities safe. In 2018, we launched our task force on Middle East minorities to address the pressing challenges faced by minority groups across the region. Our efforts focus on dialogue, bridge building, and empowerment through non-partisan initiatives. We are gathering today to mark the day of the expulsion and deportation of Jews from Arab countries and Iran, a solemn remembrance of the almost 1 million Jews who were forced to flee lands where they lived for millennia. Yet, as we honor that painful history, we also shine a light on the Jewish communities in the region that continue to thrive, such as in Morocco, and on inspiring new expressions of Jewish life and communal renewal, including the remarkable developments we are witnessing in the UAE. Joining our conversation will be three esteemed experts. I'm also pleased to acknowledge Nadine Maenzna, the incoming co-chair of the task force. Nadine is a prominent advocate for religious freedoms and is the co-chair of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable. She will contribute to our Q&A and discussion sessions. We are grateful for your participation and look forward to a rich, fruitful conversation with a diversity of perspective and deep expertise that will help illuminate both the challenges and opportunities ahead for minority communities in the region. Thank you again for joining us. Let's begin this important dialogue.
Thank you very much, Marina. Let me now introduce our panelists. So Chiara Luteri, whom I had the pleasure of meeting 2 weeks ago in Morocco, is a doctoral researcher based in Casablanca, Morocco, whose work focuses on heritage, religion, and memory in the Mediterranean and North Africa, particularly Moroccan Jewish heritage. She combines academic research with public commentary, writing on topics such as religious minority, identity, and political change in the region. Her perspective bridges scholarly analysis and policy-oriented insight, making her a valuable interlocutor for anyone working on heritage, religion, or memory in the Maghreb. Sarah Ben Shimol serves with the Jewish Agency for Israel's Initiative in the United Arab Emirates, where she represents and supports the growth of the Jewish community and its institutional presence. She was among the key Jewish community leaders who met with Israel's president during his 2022 visit to the UAE, reflecting her role in fostering Jewish civic engagement, strengthening communal infrastructure, and advancing interfaith and international understanding in the Gulf region. We are honored to have you both with us today. Chiara, could you please discuss how Morocco's efforts to protect and preserve its Jewish heritage stand out in the wider region? What implications does this have for the future of Jewish life in Morocco? And additionally, how do the challenges faced by Jewish communities elsewhere in North America differ?
So hello, and thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be sharing a little bit of the knowledge that I've acquired so far. As to Morocco's efforts to protect Jewish heritage, they have to be inserted in a longer time frame historically, which is the 1980s, where within the Jewish community itself, the Jewish community of Morocco began a process of thinking about what to do with whatever was left in terms of objects, of spaces, of places of worship by the Jewish communities themselves who decided to emigrate. They were not expelled. And so within the Jewish community, the idea started to form that saving Jewish heritage, material heritage, was in a way saving the community in a different way, saving Jewish life in a different way. And it's in the 1990s and particularly in the 2000s that these efforts were coupled, or at least were joined by ministries and state institutions who began to accelerate the process of heritage preservation. And they gave Jewish heritage in particular greater national and international visibility. Some examples of these projects that make Morocco truly stand out in the region are, for example, the fact that there are 6 Jewish museums in Morocco. Some of them are very well known, as you may know, you may have heard of what is called the first Jewish museum of the Arab world, which is located in Casablanca and has opened in 1997 or 1998. But there's also another one in Essaouira, a coastal city that used to have a flourishing Jewish community. And there are others that have been opened in renovated synagogues that now host Jewish objects as part of exhibitions. There were also renovations of synagogues that have not been turned into museums, renovation of cemeteries with their mausoleums of the saints, of Jewish schools, of Jewish communal centers. And this has led to a multiplication of actors dealing with and trying to preserve Jewish heritage, which I think is the great strength of this process, that the Jewish community is involved and state institutions are involved as well. And this visibility and this investment in Jewish heritage has had both practical and narrative or ideal consequences on Jewish life. The practical ones that I could think about was that the Jewish community of Morocco has found in heritage a field of cooperation with state institutions. Heritage preservation, in a way, has come to strengthen the institutions, the Jewish institutions, give them new legitimacy with a project that they could work on with state institutions, couple it in an effort that was shared between the two institutions, so the state representatives and the Jewish institutions. And that has given them greater legitimacy in the eyes of the Jewish community itself, but also in the eyes of state and ministerial institutions. Secondly, the restoration of synagogues, cemeteries, and even entire neighborhoods, as we can see in Marrakesh. The Mellah, traditionally Jewish neighborhood, has been renovated, and the old names of the streets have been brought back, because after the independence, there was a process of Arabization, and these streets had been assigned Arab names, and now they have been brought back to their original, at least ideal owners, through the names, their original names. And all this process has increased significantly the amount of Jewish tourists coming from abroad in Morocco. And this has had impact on the Jewish community itself. First of all, because it has provided new economic opportunities, restaurants, community centers, but also guides, tourist guides that could explain and be mediators towards between the visitors and this heritage. And all of this infrastructure that has been created with a tourist goal in mind remains on the ground and is used by the Jewish community itself, the Jewish community on site. So I think that has been a practical impact of this heritage preservation project. The ideal or narrative consequence of Jewish heritage preservation on Jewish life has been a more widespread normalization of the Jewish past, or at least the engagement of a discussion on the fact that these material traces were representatives of the minorities, to retake Marina's expression, the minorities' contribution to national life, developing little by little, or at least making more accessible a more open approach to diversity, to Jewish contribution to Moroccan history, both in material terms, so both through crafts or object production or religious object production, but also through language and particularly music, as we've seen many festivals develop around Jewish music in Morocco. So this is definitely an overall positive and unique debate that is going on in Morocco at this effort to enlarge the perspective on Moroccan past and to include the minorities. But this does not necessarily mean greater visibility for the Jewish community itself. We know that the Jewish community remains very small, and that overall, for a young Muslim Moroccan, it is hard to encounter see the living part of the Jewish community that still remains in Morocco. The lived Judaism, both as a religion and as a community, is of hard reach for an average Moroccan. And this, of course, doesn't help in the sense that the whatever sentiments and feelings of anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism that continue to exist cannot be countered with the real lived experience of encounter with the Jewish community. The only possible comparison that I can think about, given this context in the North African region, is Tunisia, which is a country that still has a small but existing Jewish community located in Djerba and in Tunis, the capital. There was a discussion in recent years about the opening of a Jewish museum, which would have been a very powerful symbol for Tunisia. Nevertheless, this opening has not happened, I think because there was first disagreement within the Jewish community itself as to where this museum should be, and secondly, because of course it was controversial. And so this is me trying to claim that Jewish heritage may seem like a non-political, non-controversial topic of cooperation, but it still is, in a way. Opening a Jewish museum is not a neutral, or at least it's not perceived as a neutral thing in North Africa. And Algeria and Libya, as far as they go, there is a lack of debate, a lack of willing to acknowledge this past, at least at the level of institutions. And I don't see how Jewish life can continue to exist beyond the visibilization of heritage in these countries. So I hope I managed to share a little bit of what I know, and I'm ready for the questions, and I'm sure that there's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chiara, for talking to us about it, and obviously we'll delve deeper in the Q&A. Sarah, I would like to turn to you now. Could you share your experiences with the growing and thriving Jewish community in the UAE, especially in the last couple of years? What does this development mean for the future of Jewish life in the Gulf and the broader MENA region? And additionally, how are Arab-Jewish cultural relations evolving in the post-Abraham Accord era?
Thanks a lot. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I moved to Dubai 10 years ago, so I moved before the Abraham Accord. And we had a Jewish life before the Abraham Accord from 2015 to 2020. Then we had a very different Jewish life after the Abraham Accord from 2020 up to now. I want to tell you that before the Abraham Accord, we were very welcome. We had a Jewish life. We were very little. We were 80 Jews. It was a very small community. We are more than 5,000 Jews today living in the UAE between Dubai and Abu Dhabi mainly. We have different communities. The Chabad has a very strong presence. We do have a Sephardic Orthodox community. We have an Ashkenazi community. And the people here live in peace with all the other religions that are here, with all the other nationalities. We feel very welcome by the leadership. They have proved themselves with October 7. They have shown their support. They have shown us the importance for us to stay here, how they react whenever we got some problems in the schools, whenever some kids have been challenged by other classmates at any age. So the integration here for the Jews is very beautiful, and the support of the leadership, we can feel it in our daily life. I'm very privileged that I do discuss with some of the leadership the future of our Jewish life here. And the thing I can say and I can guarantee you is that they're very committed to provide as much safety as we need and to provide what is needed for the community to be flourishing and to keep growing.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I would like to reiterate my last questions. Could you just speak about how Arab-Jewish cultural relations evolving in the post-Abraham Accords era? What do we see in the UAE coming up? How do you see these relationships? Not on the political level and not on, but on the more cultural level. What do we bring there? What do they bring here?
I think we're still a little bit early. The UAE is still a young country. They are trying at their level to already bring culture to their country. It's new. We have museum only for the past years. They're opening their first national museum next month on December 2. The Louvre is less than 10 years old here. We have an opera only for the past 5 years. So you need to understand that it's a very new country. So I do not think we are at a stage that we can think of opening a Jewish museum. We got some Holocaust exhibition that we've been managing to have, and memorial days, but we're not in a place where it's too early. They are building the future. They're not at the stage of looking for heritage. We have more chance of contribution, for example, with the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation. They're more looking at the innovation center, at hub center, at technology. If you go and visit the largest museum of Dubai, is the Museum of the Future. Everything is how the future will look, how the future will be programmed. So Dubai is looking forwards. They keep talking about the vision 2040, the vision of the future. So I don't think it's on our roadmap to have a museum of Jewish heritage here.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Now we'll move into our Q&A session. We're delighted to have with us Nadine Menza. Nadine, given your deep experience in the region and your understanding of the challenges faced by religious minorities, I'm eager to hear your thoughts on what we've heard from Chiara and Sarah, and obviously your questions to Chiara and Sarah. Please,
Thanks so
Nadine.
much for letting me join, and what a fascinating presentation, both about Morocco and the UAE, and encouraging to see these communities growing and thriving. And so I, of course, have plenty of questions. I guess my first one would really be, when you look across the MENA region in general, what are the kind of conditions that would allow a Jewish community to not only survive, but to meaningfully renew itself? Of course, we have hopes in Syria and Iraq and other places that we could see the same sort of Jewish renewal.
Chiara, do you want to take it?
I'll try, just off the top of my head.
Yes, of course. This is a hard question. There's no perfect, but just for us
No.
to be able to start thinking from a policy perspective, how can we help prepare
Well,
and urge conditions that could allow this to happen?
no, I'm thinking about what is already there and
Yeah.
how it can be used for the future. And I think that, as I tried to point out, the fact that there are synagogues, there are cemeteries, there are sites of worship, that's already a good starting point
Okay.
to, in my opinion, to bring some life back into this heritage, which is I understand it's my obsession, it's very personal, but it is one of the most visible things we have. And then I think that overall the feeling of security needs to be there, which as Carol discussed too when we met in Morocco, it's getting there. There is more and more of this idea that you can be, even in the public space, you can show who you are and people can know who you are religiously, and even if you don't belong to the majority, you can be part of it. Then again, it is a long, in my opinion, a long change, because it requires the everyone, or at least the majority of the majority, to embrace this idea that in the public space we can all be part of a religious community that is not Islam, and that is not necessarily the easiest, because in the private sphere there is a lot of freedom, but in the public sphere there tends to be more, it tends to be more challenging. So I think this idea of making the public sphere, the public space, a safe space is paramount to the thriving of Jewish life. And then, of course, well, then it's your job and the job of those who do politics and policies to figure out how to make it work. Education, of course, is the basis. Morocco has started efforts of including Jewish history in textbooks. It is not enough, in my opinion. There's a lot more that needs to be done in that sense, exactly to change the perception of Judaism as also as not only heritage, but a living force in society.
Thank you.
Nadine, if I can contribute to that conversation, just based on my expertise and experience, one thing that differs between those communities in Morocco and the UAE, I mean, they're different, they're very positive and in a different way. In Morocco, Jews are an inherent part of Moroccan geography, history, sociology. So in a way, they are a piece of the puzzle, whether you like it or not. So it's like it's very, very natural. Their presence here is perceived as very, very natural. And I think it hasn't changed in spite of the challenges that we've seen in the last 2 years. This has not changed in terms of Jews living in Morocco. Obviously, the public opinion, as Kiara pointed out, it's a challenge. But then in terms of safety of the Jewish community, this has not changed that much. And in terms of their perception as part and parcel of Moroccan society. And in the UAE, it's been different and it's been positive in its own way. But Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that in the UAE, it's their very, very deep agenda of tolerance and acceptance and respect to minorities, to religious minorities, that make it a very, very convenient and comfortable place for Jews to live in. And Sarah, you can obviously contribute from your experience, which I don't have.
Yes, yes. This is deeply part into their values, At the end of the day, in the UAE, and it's way before the Abraham Accord, they have decided to develop the Abrahamic family house. And from day one, or almost day one, a synagogue was included. So if you go to the Louvre Museum that opened 10 years ago, they have a Torah scroll. So all those things has always shown their value for being fair, for being true to history, for tolerance, for inclusion. And I do really believe that the Abraham Accord are great, but even without the Abraham Accord, the Jewish life has been possible, what existed already. We were very welcome already before that, even if the numbers were very small. And we know that we are part today of their society. We know that tolerance is in their DNA, it's in their value, it's in the future of the pays. They want to build and they want to keep building a nation with a vision that has inclusion, that include all nationality, include all religion, include all languages. And this is very important. And we are in a country where extremism is not tolerated. So also this helps a lot for the integration of the Jews. We are not suffering for extreme situation here. There is no extreme right, there is no extreme left. Extremism doesn't exist or it's not tolerated at all.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I was actually in February in Damascus when they had their first Jewish delegation visit, and there was so much enthusiasm. It was everyone was talking about how exciting it was to think that the Jewish community could come back to Damascus and thrive again. And I'd also visited the synagogue in northeast Syria that exists, that's been preserved for so many years. But of course, we don't have the same sort of stability, and there is right now a lot of insecurity for stability and safety that I think is affecting all the minorities. But it is encouraging to know how many people are hopeful that at some point that community will come back and be able to experience life again and community there again, because they are, as you mentioned, that being part of the history, and clearly there's probably no country that has such a deep history. Maybe obviously a lot in the Middle East of the Jewish history. I'd love to ask another question, if I can. Um, you know, as we look at Morocco and the UAE in particular, since we've seen so much success there, is there a way that we could, are there lessons learned for other minority communities in the Middle East that are also hoping to have a renewal? Because I know we see very little Assyrians now in Iraq and Syria, for instance, and I know that they'd love to see the same sort of renewal.
But I think we also have to understand that for us in the UAE, it's not that the Jews have, it's not only the volunteer or the will of the Jews. It's like the leadership here is quite unbelievable. And the will of the leadership for having a flourishing Jewish community is a daily job, I want to tell you. At the end of the day, they want us to be good here. They want us to feel comfortable. They are making all the efforts to see a proper Jewish community growing. So I don't think you have many leadership in the world. Today in Europe, what the leaders of Europe are giving to Jewish communities is not even half of what they are doing for us here. So I think we have not to forget that the vision and the leadership of the UAE is quite unique. And you can see it on our level on the Jewish community, but you can see how successful is the country, how successful is the economy, how successful is their politics, how happy are the population here from all over the world. You can talk to Indian, to Filipino, to Pakistanis, to Italian, to German, to French. People are happy living here. So at the end of the day, we have to be very realistic that this is existing because of the vision and because of the leadership.
Do you see, either one of you see political, social, or cultural challenges, any sort of challenges that could interfere with the revival that we're seeing in both of these countries?
I'm just sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm trying to build on what Sarah just said and also try maybe to answer the question at the same time. Morocco has had a specific trajectory that has heavily relied on legal reform and reform in general. Since the king, the current king Mohammed VI, came to power, there has been a big challenge to the very idea of Moroccan identity, because the 2011 uprisings in Morocco were characterized by demands of recognition of the pluralism that is inherent to Moroccan history and to Moroccan culture and identity. And this has been constitutionalized. This difference, this pluralism, is now part of the Moroccan constitution. So, and I mean, the core of this constitutionalism is not of this constitutionalization is not Judaism. The core is the Amazigh not even minority, but the Amazigh minoritized part of the Moroccan culture and ethnicity, because it is a controversial identity that can be defined in many ways according to whom we speak. But at least the language and cultural contribution of that minoritized group has been acknowledged, together with other groups that have nourished the Moroccan identity historically. So I think that that's a lesson to be learned, in the sense that we see a moment of collective reflection starting from that moment. Who are we? What is it to be Moroccan today? And the state, through the king and the king's constitution that was approved by the people, provided an answer. And that answer had pluralism at its core. So that is a very, in my opinion, rare worldwide event. So it has to be acknowledged as a stepping stone to something. Then what do we do with it? That's another question. But it is a stepping stone for the Jewish minority, but also for all the other groups that have been considered minorities. And I I think that the more there is, as Sarah was saying, a political desire to nourish and preserve a plural society, and I'm trying to say this in very diplomatic terms, but the more there is also a need to reinforce a certain vision, this idea of vision that is omnipresent, but a certain vision of what ethnicity is for the state and what religion is for the state. And the more this relationship is peaceful between these identities and the state itself and the state institutions and the representation of the people, the more opening there can be to the difference. And this is not just the difference of religion and ethnicity, but also the difference of opinion and political differences. So pluralism is nourished by the nourishing of pluralism. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Fascinating. Thank you.
I think Sarah wanted to say something before.
No, all good.
Nadine, if I may, I have a question and I don't know if there's a clear answer to that, but I'm just wondering if the fact that Jews in Morocco, for example, they've had, I mean, there's been a community for hundreds of years, and they have developed their own kind of Moroccan Jewish tradition, including a language, dialect, which is very unique to them, Judeo-Arabic, and that is probably like every Jewish community in the Arab world had its own dialect. But then, Sarah, in the UAE, Jews do not necessarily speak the language of the place. They do not speak Arabic. The way they engage is in probably in English, in French, in other languages. And they don't, I'm trying to say that they are not perceived local, but on the other hand, they're so well accepted. And this to me raises questions about, language and culture and what you bring to the place you live in.
Because here in the UAE, English is the language. Everyone speaks English. That's the common language that we all speak. You also need to understand that the locals are only 10% of the population. 90% of the population of the UAE is expat. So at the end of the day, everyone is a minority. So we are a minority like everyone else. So that's also why it's working.
A minority among minorities.
Yes, a minority among minorities. And at the end of the day, as much as we feel very comfortable and we know that we are very welcome and we know how much effort they are putting to for our protection, to have us safe, because since October 7th, it's not so easy to be in the region where we are in the world and to keep the community safe, even if we have the most dramatic event and we got a terrible murder in the community. They are doubling, tripling their efforts to be sure that we can stay and we can grow here. But you need to remember that we are in a region in the world where it's not so easy, to have a growing Jewish community.
Thank you. Sarah, maybe you can say Nadine, maybe you can say a couple of words from your experience in the region where you've seen communities flourishing, but also other communities decreasing in numbers and being persecuted and like having a very, very different experience than those safe communities. Could you please just reflect on the comparison here?
Sure. No, definitely we see a tolerance for some minority communities and not others, depending on their histories and the relationships in different communities and even really the same communities across the borders in Iraq and Syria might experience different conditions. And so hearing the success in Morocco and the Jewish community in both Morocco and the UAE is so interesting because clearly both governments have a strong desire to see peace among all of their citizens. And we're not always seeing that in these different countries. What we're seeing, instead of that equal citizenship model, which seems to be what we're seeing. And of course, the Constitution really struck me in Morocco because here we're especially right now dealing with a transitional constitution in Syria. So there's an opportunity here to change that constitution rather than having right now there's a preferred group. It's a Syrian, they're calling Syria the Arab Republic, although the last couple of days we've heard that the foreign minister has been just calling it the Syrian Republic. And if in fact they could make that change, that would be celebrated in such a huge way. And I do think that there is that legal when there are legal changes that legitimize communities in a country and make everyone equal, it does send a message to the entire community and could definitely affect conditions on the ground. And I think sometimes there's there's a sense that it won't matter, that constitutions don't matter because there's so many countries that have them and they don't follow them. And so why should we be concerned about these constitutions? But I think what you shared about the Moroccan one is particularly interested to me, that it did send a message that there is that equal treatment of all minorities, of all communities, and of course we have the UAE, the minorities of minorities. So it's complicated, but I think that there are things that we can take from this. That as the international community, for us, like how can we be pressing for policy for say the United States in particular that could push some of these countries that would um, change some of the conditions that might create an environment more welcoming to both the Jewish community and the other minorities in the community. So to me, I'm always looking for those ways on how the policies, and I know the U.S. often, the UK, the EU, there's a lot of big actors that could start pushing for some of these policies that could make a difference for these fragile communities. And for me, I'm always trying to listen to those. I think the one thing that struck me, I think it was you, Shara, that mentioned Tunisia and how they weren't able to do bring a museum in and mentioned about the community discourse. And I guess I'm curious is I think every community has differences, and of course, politics is as local in every country. But do you think the unity of the community in both Morocco and the UAE had something to do with their success?
Yes, I think so. The community, the unity, that is not to say the homogeneity. I mean, that is
Hmm.
not to say that they're all aligned as to political values or as to national values or as to even religious practice and fervor from one side to the other. There's a large spectrum, but um, for the Jews of Morocco who decided to stay, there is for all of them the idea that they are part of the Moroccan nation and they are willing to contribute to their own country, which they consider to be Morocco 100%. And they claim their Moroccanness. And as it has been later brought to my attention, they do claim double indigeneity in, they claim this double identity in a way, but they do not refrain from pointing out their attachment to their country and their will to contribute to its development or to its enrichment or to its many ways of contributing to it. But it was framed like this even when they started working on their heritage. Yes, we're salvaging our heritage, but we're also doing it for the greater good of our national community. So yes, indeed, at least the spirit behind it is what
Hmm.
led to the survival or at least the ability to be part of really a national body.
Thank you. Interesting.
All right, Sarah, anything to contribute to that question?
No, I think we feel the same. We also feel very we feel part of the country. Like even if we know we are guests in that country, we feel part of the values. We identify ourselves with what the leadership is doing. So I think those are common things we're having with Morocco.
Thank you so much. At this time, our webinar is concluded. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Kiara and Sarah. Stay tuned for updates from ADL and ADL's Task Force on Middle East Minorities. Please subscribe to our ADL's YouTube channel and feel free to share our content. Thank you for joining us. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.